Hey everyone, and welcome. Today we are diving deep into democracy. And I don't mean the definition you learned in school. We're talking about the messy, complex, and totally fascinating reality. We're going to explore how your single vote gives a government its authority, its mandate, and what on earth happens when voters seem to send two completely opposite messages at the exact same time.
So let's just start with the big question. What is democracy, really? I mean, is it just about voting every few years? Is it about freedom of speech? It's this huge, sprawling concept. And honestly, the simple answers, they kind of miss all the interesting stuff, all the mechanics of how it actually works.
You always hear that phrase, government by the people. And, it's a great slogan, but it doesn't really tell you anything about how the machinery of government is supposed to function day to day. So, to really get a handle on it, we need a better, more practical way of looking at it. And believe it or not, we can actually break this massive idea down into three core principles. And if you can get your head around these three pillars, you'll understand pretty much everything else that follows, from how laws get made to the very authority a government claims to have. And here they are, the big three: accountability, representation, and participation. I want you to think of these as the three legs of a stool. If any one of them is weak or wobbly, the whole system just doesn't work right. So let's take a look at each one. All right, let's dive in. What do these three big words actually mean in the real world? Okay, first up, accountability. You've probably heard the term checks and balances, right? Well, this is it. It's the simple idea that nobody in power gets a free pass. Everyone answers to someone. A government is held accountable by an upper house, like a Senate. The entire parliament can be held accountable by the courts. And of course, the most important one, every few years, all of them are held accountable by us, the voters. Next up is representation. Now, this one is absolutely crucial. It's the principle that our leaders get their authority, their credibility, directly from us, the people. And this authority has a name. It's called a mandate. It is the entire source of their power, and we're definitely going to come back to this idea in a bit. And here's a perfect example of representation in action. A lot of democracies use two different voting systems to try and get the balance right. So you have the lower house, which is usually designed to give you a clear winner, a stable government. But then you have the upper house, which often uses proportional voting. That just means if a smaller party gets, say, 10% of the national vote, they get about 10% of the seats. The end result, you get a clear government, but also a diverse house of review to keep them in check. And that brings us to our third and final pillar, participation. Honestly, this is the bedrock of the whole system. It's that powerful, simple idea that the government is by the people. It means everyone deserves a vote, and every single vote should carry the same weight. Taking away someone's right to vote, well, that's one of the most serious things a democracy can ever do. Okay, so we've got our three pillars. Now, let's circle back to representation and zoom in on that one specific concept, the mandate. The authority a government says it gets from your vote, because this right here is where democracy gets really, really fascinating. At its most basic level, a mandate seems super straightforward, right? A political party stands up and says, hey, vote for us and we promise we'll do A, B, and C. They win the election and boom, they can turn around and say they have a clear mandate from the people to do those things. Simple. Yeah, if only it were that easy. See, here's the catch. You almost never vote for just one policy. You vote for a whole party. And that party comes with this giant platform of hundreds of ideas, promises, and philosophies, all bundled together. I mean, just to give you an idea of the scale we're talking about, in one single state election, one party made, get this, over 400 specific promises. 400. Do you think a single voter out there agreed with every single one of those? No way. And this is the reality for pretty much all of us, isn't it? When we go to vote, we're picking the party we mostly agree with. You probably love a bunch of their policies, you're kind of meh on some others, and then there's that 20% that you actively dislike. You're making a trade-off, picking the best option you can from a limited menu. So this leads us to the million-dollar question. By casting your vote for that party, did you also give them a mandate to push through that 20% of policies you can't stand? This is the central puzzle of mandate theory, and it gets complicated really, really fast. And just when you think it can't get any more complex, it does. What if voters are actually being incredibly strategic? Some people argue that voters intentionally split their vote. They give one party the power to govern, but they give another party the power to hit the brakes. And this creates something called conflicting mandates. Let's make this real. We're going to look at a classic case study from Australia. Back in the late 90s, the government's number one promise, the absolute core of their election platform, was to bring in a new tax called the Goods and Services Tax, or GST. So here's what the voters did. It's fascinating. They gave the government a solid majority in the lower house, the one that forms government. But in the upper house, the Senate, they gave the deciding votes, the balance of power, to a totally different, smaller party called the Democrats. So now you have two groups, each with a totally legitimate claim to authority from the voters. The government can correctly say, the people elected us. They want this GST. But the Democrats can turn around and, just as correctly, say, well, the people give us the power to review your laws, so they must want us to change this GST. So who's right? Well, in this case, the result was a compromise. They had to negotiate. The government got its big new tax, but the Democrats forced them to make major changes, like making fresh food exempt from the tax. The conflicting mandates actually led to a different outcome, one that many people argued was better and closer to what the public actually wanted. But it doesn't always end in a nice, neat compromise. Let's hop over to the US in the mid-90s. You had President Clinton, who was elected on a very clear pro-choice platform. But then, in the midterm elections, the voters gave control of Congress to the other party, who had campaigned just as hard on pro-life policies. Two crystal clear mandates on an issue where finding a middle ground is, well, nearly impossible. So what's supposed to happen now? I mean, who wins? Should Congress get its way, since they write the laws? Should the president use his veto power to block them and protect his own mandate? Maybe the group with the most recent election win has the stronger claim. There's just no easy answer. And what happened in this case? Deadlock. Congress passed a bill, Clinton vetoed it. Stalemate. And this really brings us to the core dilemma here. This whole messy situation, it isn't necessarily a flaw in the system. You could argue it's a feature. We, the people, create these complex outcomes with our votes. The system is often designed to have these competing centers of power, these checks and balances. So I'll leave you with this one final thought, because there really is no simple answer. When voters deliver two valid but totally opposing instructions, who is supposed to win? The government with the broad authority to get things done, or the House of Review with a specific authority to check and to change? It's the fundamental, unresolved tension right at the very heart of modern democracy. Something to think about. Thanks for joining me.